Making changes to the rolling stock, or trains for the layman. If you want to make changes, it involves changing the trains that are used. There are a number of things to be aware of. Trains are built to order. They are specially ordered from the factory about 4 years in advance. There is no supermarket for trains, so buying them must be carefully planned. Factors which affect the specification of trains are what type of traction they will use, where on the network will they run, and does that have any limitations? How many passengers will it carry? How long are journeys going to be? This impacts passenger comfort factors, like whether you need toilets, the balance of standing room versus seats, and onboard catering. Once your new trains arrive, they must be tested and trialed. This is a critical activity and a key aspect of system testing to check that the train and infrastructure will work together. You have to have the depot and stabling space ready for the trains. So you have your trains and depot sorted. Now who is going to operate them? Now let's talk about drivers. It takes 2 years to train a driver from recruitment to being passed out to drive a train. If you order additional trains, you may need more drivers. If you have new trains on existing routes, you'll still have to allow time for drivers to become trained on using the new trains on the existing route. Crews will also have to have time to train on any new trains. Don't forget that you need to consider this as a system change. Bringing in new trains may mean also changing the infrastructure. If your trains are longer, you may need to lengthen platforms. There may be bridges over the railway that need heightened too. These are infrastructure changes as a result of changing the trains. We will see what is involved in those when we look at the impact of changing the infrastructure. If you are going to create a change to the infrastructure, there are a lot of system considerations. This is the question sequence you should ask yourself when considering a change. Start with what you want to achieve. What service do you want to provide? What would the timetable be? What infrastructure might be needed to do that? Undertaking a major project on the UK's railway network is like open heart surgery. This is because of the need to move people and goods. This does not stop during the life of your project. Infrastructure changes often require the closure of railway for some periods, and this has to be carefully balanced against the need to move people and goods. Closing the railway to undertake work is called taking possession of the railway. Some work is undertaken in possessions that take control if the railway during times in which trains are not running, such as during the night. This gives access to the railway, but not only for limited periods, especially when you factor in setup, access to site, and demobilization. It also means working in the dark and when people are sleeping. So the work has to be carefully planned, managed, and executed. It can take a long time to complete project works by doing small amounts of work every evening, then handing the railway back into use for the next morning service. This means that sometimes you may need to close the railway for longer periods of time in order to carry out the work. Booking time to do this has to be formally arranged 16 months in advance as part of the timetable bid process. This means that a lot of the justification and methodology for that, as well as mitigating the impacts, has to be done in advance. The benefits of doing this have to be weighed against the impact and costs of doing it. The impacts of closing the railway include having to provide means for passengers to travel, rerouting freight movements, compensating TOCs and FOCs for any loss of revenue. When planning a change to the infrastructure, you should be aware that it is a complex piece of work and often involves multiple decisions. We will take a quick tour of what some of the disciplines are and what making a change could mean. Stations range in type, size, and purpose. There are 8 categories of station in the UK. It is important to consider where you are, what is the local context, and what are people's expectations. How far is it for people to travel to the station? Will they have to travel the first and last mile? What about parking and cycling infrastructure? How will buses interact? Why? Interchange, terminus, regeneration? In which case, it has to be the part of a bigger plan. Power. Will you be electrifying as part of your plans? You have to look beyond the main line and consider. You may have to electrify sidings, depots, connecting routes, and a significant power supply is needed. Signaling. Train movements are controlled by what is commonly referred to as signaling systems. You should understand the existing systems and what you connect into it and how far that goes. What is your compatibility and maturity of your plans to access the likely impacts? If you're looking at digital railway solutions, you should be aware that signaling does not come as standard, with additional features such as traffic management and automatic route settings. You may need to include these to deliver your benefits. Again, you have to consider the impacts on existing interfacing infrastructure, some of which may not be immediately adjacent to your network, as it may be about the wider routes that trains have to travel. Innovation, rolling stock, signaling. Operations. Operations matter, so your plans have to account for how the railway might work once it is in service. These include train delays or failures, and how you build infrastructure that allows for recovery during incidents even as simple as a passenger taking ill. Trains cannot overtake each other without passing loops. If you change infrastructure, you need to train drivers on how to drive on the route. There is only a limited amount that can be done using a simulator.